What's up, guys? I'm Coach Ryan Family from the VIPAR Pit. Today I want to talk about stability as it relates to hypertrophy training. Now, when you're looking at a given exercise that you want to include in your muscle building program, you have to ask yourself, is it a stable movement or an unstable movement? Stable movements are better for hypertrophy. The less stability you have, the less hypertrophy you're going to drive to the targeted tissues. Now, before I go on, let me just throw this out there. I am not talking in the context of rehabilitation. I am not talking in the context of sports performance. I am strictly talking in terms of body composition and hypertrophy. So why is that? Why would more stable movements be better for hypertrophy? Wouldn't less stable movements where the stabilizer muscles have to work be better for hypertrophy? No, and here's why. Let's take a look at a common scenario. Let's say you have someone who wants to train their hamstrings and posterior chain. So their hamstrings, glutes, spinal erectors. And maybe they notice that one side is stronger than the other or more well developed than the other. So a lot of people in their head go, okay, I'm gonna go with a single leg Romanian deadlift. And you'll see, grab some dumbbells, maybe a trap bar or a barbell, and do a single leg Romanian deadlift, like so, extending the back leg up. Now, there's a couple issues with that. First of all, you have a lot of neural drive, a lot of drive from your brain going to your feet just to keep you stabilized. This is known as proprioception. So you've got brain juice going towards your feet. Then you've got brain juice going towards your torso to prevent your pelvis from rocking all over the place. A lot of people, when they do this movement, you'll see them open up the hips as they do it. That's a big no-no. You want to have your hips level. So you have a lot of brain drive going to your torso and your pelvis. Then you have a lot of brain drive to the glutes on that side and the tiny small stabilizers of the hip. So all that brain juice is getting spread out and not as much is left over to drive tension to the hamstrings and the glute max, which is what you're aiming for with this exercise. So when you're doing this, it's a fine exercise to include in a program, especially early off season or for athletes or as an introduction. But if you're thinking about hypertrophy, there are better options. One of the first better options that you have is doing them braced. So you hold your hand onto something. Now you're making a conscious effort not to drag with your hand, but you're just holding for support. This reduces the need of the small intrinsic muscle of the foot to work super hard to try to control your balance. It also gives you something to anchor against so that your pelvis doesn't open wide up, and you can just focus on directing all that tension right into the glutes and hamstrings of the working leg, okay? Another option that I really like for hamstrings and posterior chain when we're looking at the unilateral option is the kickstand or B-stance Romanian deadlift. What we're looking at here, when you set up with your feet, so your feet are gonna be hip width apart, you're going to take the non-working leg and you're gonna step it just behind the heel of the working leg. So in this case, I'm working my right leg because it's forward, and it's called a kickstand RDL because you're just using this leg as a kickstand. You're not putting a ton of weight on it. So you're just kickstanding there, and then you're doing an RDL with the working leg. Bracing the core tight, pushing the hips back, getting a stretch, going to your active hip range of motion, and then coming back up, okay? This is just an example. You will notice you'll be able to use more weight as you progress from unsupported to supported to kickstand. Kickstand is going to be your strongest unilateral variation because there is a little bit of support being offered with the non-working leg. It's going to be a lot less though. So those are just a couple options using the single leg RDL, but it applies to every context. The more you have to stabilize other parts of your body, the less tension is going to get directed towards the muscles you're trying to train. So that's why when it comes to hypertrophy training, machines are especially useful. Things where you're locked in and stable and there's only one joint area moving, isolation exercise can be particularly useful. But again, do not take this out of context. I'm not referring to this as the best method for necessarily athletic populations or rehab. Certainly those populations are going to benefit from some degrees of varying stability throughout the training cycle. But I just want to give you some context here to help you select better movements. So ask yourself, is this stable? Do I have to work hard to not direct tension to other joints? If you do, then it's probably not the best option for hypertrophy, and there's better options for muscle growth on the table. I'm Coach Ryan Family from the VIPAR Pit. I hope you enjoyed this food for thought. Please hit like and subscribe below. If you haven't already, hit me in the comment section with any questions, and I'll see you next time.